I'm Helen Norbury, and this is Becoming Unapologetically Me, the show all about authentic self-expression with expert guests from the fields of health, leadership, and mindset. This show is here to show you that you don't need to conform to the expectations that friends, family, and society have of you. And actually, what we can unearth when we find the courage to become the unapologetic version of who we are. Grab a cup of coffee and get your notepad out for this week's episode. Welcome back to Becoming Unapologetically Me, and I'm really excited for this conversation today. I want to give a massive warm welcome to Greg Fearon. So Greg is, for me, the embodiment of an empowered entrepreneur, and I really love his take on integrating all the aspects of ourselves and putting our health at the center of everything that we do. It's a topic that's really close to my heart, and I'm definitely with Greg on his point of view that we can't just push harder to be successful in our lives. Actually, our health is really central to our success. So, Greg, welcome. And I'd like to start by asking you, who were the people and what were the experiences that most influenced you in your early life?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. So
Start big.
Yeah, let's start big. So one of my heroes, I guess, growing up was David Attenborough.
Okay.
I know it's the most random answer, but he was the kind of embodiment of someone who looked so happy during what they were doing, so passionate and so engrossed in doing the thing that he loved. He was, for me, always been an idol in my life. I think the other people who got me to where I am is seeing my mum and my sisters struggle with their health and their weight, especially. And I found it really hard because I'm just the brother. I'm just his son, you know? So no one listened to me. I would give advice and no one would listen to me, but I was astounded by the amount of, for want of a better word, BS that a lot of women are given how to lose body fat, get healthy, get stronger. And that pushed me into where I am now, I guess.
I think that's really true, that certainly as a woman and having grown up in that diet culture as well, there's 1,000,001 different ways that people will tell you or offer you for the silver bullet for losing weight and becoming healthy or whatever that might look like. And some of them, I have to say, intuitively feel really unhealthy, but I'm sure we will come on to talk about that in just a minute. So you talked there about David Attenborough and like really being exactly the right job for him and doing everything that he loved. So what does it mean for you living in your truth, and how do you apply that in your life?
First of all, the number one thing for me is that I have to be able to demonstrate what I talk to my clients. I can't say, hey, ladies, you know, you've got to go and train at least 3 times a week without doing it myself. And that for me is being in truth and in integrity with myself, for sure. But I think the moment for me when I'm in my truth is in that moment when I'm having an interaction with a client. That is, for me, the most magical moment. And it's where probably at my strongest is in that moment where someone approaches me with a question or a thought, and I'm like, okay, let's unpack this. Let's get to the bottom of it. For me, it's taken me a long time to acknowledge that as well, that is where my superpower lies. But when I'm in that moment, that's when I feel like the stars are arranged, the moon is aligned, everything else. That's where I'm in my absolute truth, for sure.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think definitely the sign of a really good coach when you can kind of peel back the layers to see what's actually going on at the sort of the underneath of the challenges that someone might be experiencing in any moment. And such a, like you say, a superpower to be able to support people and to be able to see through all of that. But I'm sure in your life, like all of us, that you have been through a number of adversities. So how do you keep grounded and hopeful, positive moving forwards? Because I definitely think of you as a very positive, motivated, forward-looking person. So when life is throwing you those curved balls and trying to knock you off your track, how do you keep true to who you are and keep that positive outlook on life?
One of my weaker habits, I won't call it a bad habit, it can be very good at isolating myself when things aren't going the way that I want them to be. And it's taken me a long time to recognize that I need to speak up when I'm struggling with anything. So number one is I have a coach and I lean into that relationship and I try and ask for help. And one of the things I've had to really learn more about lately is obviously talk to a partner about when I'm going through stuff or what's going on in my mind. So that's been a really big learning curve for me. I think the third thing is writing and journaling and being able to express what's going on in my head onto a piece of paper, because then it becomes a bit more clearer. I remember when I tore my Achilles tendon and I thought I would never squat again. That's what the doctor told me. I was very much in person at that time as well. And so physically training people. And I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I remember for about 3 days after my injury, after being in the cast and stuff, I literally sat in bed and I wallowed. I absolutely just wallowed. And I remember I was meant to have a call with my coach and he just said, right, is this what you would tell your client to do? It's a very good point. So no. So I got up. He said, right, get off this call, sort yourself out and get off your bed, hobble over to your desk, set up your laptop, and let's have a proper call as you would show up. And I think that's a big thing that I've had to work on, is the identity that when the chips are down is who am I going to be in that moment? And it's a question that I just ask myself when I need to.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. There's a few points in what you've said just in that section there about it's really not helpful, is it, when doctors tell you that you're not going to be able to do something, and it kind of puts these big mind blocks in the way. I've also found a lot of power in journaling, and I've described it to someone that sometimes my head feels like a bowl of spaghetti. And then the journaling is like laying out the strands of spaghetti. And then suddenly you can see, oh, I've got 100 strands of spaghetti in this bowl. It's not just this big mess that feels unmanageable and out of control in a way. The other thing, interestingly, I read yesterday was that our tendencies in those moments, you talked about isolating yourself. Apparently those are like the mirror of our love language. So if you isolate yourself, actually the thing that you need most is quality time with someone. I found that really interesting and reflecting on it in my own experiences as well. So I don't know if that resonates with you either.
I think I can be a kind of a very much a giving person, and something that's potentially got me near to, I wouldn't say burn up, but has got me very tired in the past has been giving my all to other people and not saving any energy for myself. So I can see where that could be definitely true.
Yeah, interesting. So what are the values that guide you in your life, and how did you kind of find them or identify what they are?
I think the first one is, right, do what you can with what you've got. So when my ex-partner at the time said, I'm going to have a child, and I remember it very well. We were at Watford train station. She was about to go home and the train went past and my whole life flashed in front of me. I'm like, what? I'm going to be a dad. Oh my God. I don't have things in place and all that kind of stuff. So I remember sitting down when I went home and said, right, what can I do with what I've got right now? Do I need to work later? Do I need to get promotion so I can make some money? What do I need to do? What can I do? And I think that's been a really big one for me, is like control the controllables. We can spend a lot of time and energy, on things that we can't do anything about. And there's a really interesting book, there's a quote in a book that said, people never complain about the things that they can change.
Interesting. Yeah.
Nobody complains about gravity, do they? Damn it, I hate gravity. But no one does that because we all know that we can't get about it. Whereas people complain about the weather, you can move country if you really want to. That's been one of the big ones, is control what I can control. Number 2, I'd say, is honesty. And I think it's a really hard one, especially the industry that I'm in, where there are lots of half-truths and stuff. And for me, I've always tried to be in integrity with, right, if I'm giving someone information, I want to know it's the most up-to-date, most studied piece of information. I won't lie to someone and say, well, look, do this special diet or whatever, because again, that sets people up for failure. So that's been a really big thing. And I think number 3 is listen deeply to people, because you'll learn a whole lot more about a person when you listen. And that's probably a value that I've probably really tried to work on, especially when I went into management situations and I started to become a leader. I realized that I stopped talking and I just listen. The answers will come out.
And there's multiple layers of listening. It's not just what someone's saying, but what is the meaning underneath that? What's the emotion that's driving the thing that they're saying as well? And you're absolutely right. It's such a source of wisdom when you can listen deeply and understand deeply where someone's coming from. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So how do you hope that living authentically is going to shape your legacy and that mark that you leave on the world and on your family and things like that?
That's a very deep question. I wasn't ready for that. You didn't prep me for that.
Left field.
Well, I think there's the one thing, first of all, is I want my son to be able to see that I do everything I can to look after my health. And I hope, I've always said that I want to be 90s to be able to rest with my son. And the whole point of that is that I want to stay as independent as I can for as long as I can, but also demonstrate to my son and any potential grandchildren that may come along that you do everything you can do what you can to look after you. The other thing is that in the work that I do, there's so many unseen benefits. So I work with the client in front of me, but there are so many downstream benefits to how they show up for their work, how they show up for their family, how they treat themselves. And I'm just a little ripple in a pond, but that ripple obviously vibrates outwards. So if I can help one person, then I know I've helped a family of maybe 3 or 4 or whatever, or I've maybe helped someone's team at work, or someone's, increased their income because of the work we've done together. I know that then that's my legacy, and it might not be heralded by everyone, but I know it's seen and felt by the people I work with. So that's my legacy, and the more people I can help, the better.
Yeah, I love that ripple effect for sure. And as you know, but to share with everybody else, that us working together and my children seeing me put more focus on my health and my well-being, going to the gym regularly. Next thing they're asking me, oh, can we come to the gym with you? And so now the 3 of us go to the gym together. And actually, they've even started bringing some of their friends along as well. And so, I just love that ripple that you and I having a conversation is now touching 4 or 5 teenagers as well. And, the impact that that's going to have in their lives as well. Not just now, but in terms of setting those best habits and those routines and putting a focus on their well-being from such a young age. Because I know I thought I was invincible at that age and didn't need to bother about my health. It would all just happen, And actually that leads me really nicely onto my next question, because we've spoken a lot about that mind-body connection and how you can't separate out your physical health from your mental health, from your spiritual health, your emotional health, all these aspects of our health, which we often hear bandied around. But I'd just love to know a bit of your take on that connection between all the aspects of our health.
Oh, Lord, this is going to be a big one. So growing up, one of my favorite things was to watch 70s martial arts films. I would slip my plimsolls on with the white socks and everything. I would do the whole, the dub speak and everything. And I remember in one of the films, someone said, you have to be the style that you're trying to use. So Chinese martial arts, many different styles. So if you were a tiger, you had to fight ferociously. And I remember that really baffled me. Well, do you have to become the tiger? And essentially that's what he was saying. And that was where the start of me understanding that the brain and body are one. They're constantly talking to each other. And later on in my career, where I went to work in UCLH Hospital, and I worked in different departments and ran different departments. But what has always astounded me was that we try and separate all the different specialties. And I get it, because, you want a specialist in neurology or whatever that might be. But then how are we looking at that holistically? Because if someone has a major chronic issue, that's bound to play a role in how they think, how they operate, how they look after themselves overall, not just a chronic issue. And I remember often talking to some of the doctors and saying, well, you might have solved the hormonal problem, let's say hypothyroid, with meditation, but we haven't solved their thinking. And that's why they can't still now get the results they want. And you just can't separate the body from the brain. The two are talking every second of every day. And this thing where we kind of separate mental health and physical health, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And there needs to be more ways in the world that we can bring the two together. And I think that's why I love martial arts, is moving meditation. I think that's why I love climbing, because it's, again, moving meditation or animal flow, because it puts your brain into your body.
Yeah. My children went to a school where they did karate as part of the curriculum from the age of 4 when they started school. And I remember saying to the head teacher, why do you do karate on the curriculum? And she said, it is fantastic for children to understand instructions and to be able to kind of process an instruction and what it means and how to kind of control their bodies as well. Because, 4-year-olds are a bit all over the place in a lot of cases. And so to learn that sitting still means that your bottom is touching on the floor, and to really kind of sense what that means inside of your body, as well as everything else that's going around outside of it as well. And this school was an absolutely fantastic school, got really good sort of academic results with the children. And I'm absolutely convinced it was because the karate and everything that wrapped around that, it played such an important role in the education of 4+ year olds. It was really, really important. And I also really recognize the value of physical exercise, for example, on your mental health. And I really think that is undersold to people where, yes, we talk about medication, obviously in the health industry as well, a lot about, taking pills to kind of deal with anxiety or depression or anything like that. And I'm not saying there's not a place for those, but actually the value of physical exercise and just the natural endorphins in our mental health as well, I think is just I think it's underestimated, to be honest, across the world.
I mean, it's crazy how the human brain works, because the human brain is designed to find shortcuts. The human brain is amazing for finding ways to circumvent the system, which is why we have cars and planes and all these amazing things. And I do feel sorry for doctors in some ways. I've worked with a lot of doctors and I used to watch them, and I've been in surgery sometimes or consultations, and the doctor wants to say, look, you need to start exercise. But we've got such a culture of, we want an immediate result now. We want something to fix the pain, the immediate pain. Things like exercise, meditation, sleep, just doesn't seem to cut it for people. And it's a really hard message to overcome sometimes. And I wish, maybe we should all have things like martial arts or ballet or yoga in schools as stand in the curriculum, because then people would start to see that excellence and being able to do certain things comes with time and practice, anything. And I think that's why I love martial arts so much, because we used to have to do the same movement over and over and over and over again, to the point where it was like you would hate your teacher. You'd want to swear at him afterwards. What it taught us was that if you repeat the same movements, you get better at it. And I think one of the big barriers to entry for people is that they don't feel good, especially for women who often, around the age of 14, I noticed it, would stop doing sports school. Body changing, all of a sudden hips are grown and the knees and the hips don't really align. Menstrual cycle just appears out of nowhere. And there's all these kind of self-confidence issues. And I think that's a time where a lot of women leave formal exercise.
I can resonate with that.
Yeah, and there you go. And then from when you try to get back to it, you're not very good at it. We don't like being beginners. So how can we show people that it doesn't matter when you start? If you just start, actually, if you don't start, your rate of expertise goes really fast at the beginning. It's amazing. You just do practice it regularly. So movement is definitely a form of medicine, I believe, for sure, allied with stillness. So we need the yin and the yang of everything. We can't always be training really hard. We need to rest and recover. I think, if we can encourage people and find ways to get people to move their bodies, to understand what your body can do, you change so many lives.
Yeah. I remember I used to work at a company, and the CEO said, with hard work and deliberate practice, anybody can become great, which I think is actually based on a Lao Tzu quote as well. And this kind of idea that 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, and actually you could become pretty amazing at pretty much anything that you set your mind to, whether that's playing the violin or martial arts or, anything else that you might set your mind to. And I think it's really counter to the culture that we have now, like you're saying about this sort of instant gratification culture. And actually, how do you also instill that message of just practice is going to get you to where you want to get to? So yeah, really interesting. So kind of leading on from that, what has your health journey taught you about resilience and self-care and any of those other aspects of your character that are so important?
Well, simply this, that when I'm not in the best shape, I can't perform in other areas of my life. when I was younger. So around the age of about 10 or so, I was carrying quite a lot of weight. And I realized I couldn't run after the other kids in the street when we used to play. I was getting chosen last for sports and stuff. And I was like, wow, okay. Then something happened magically. I don't know, puberty hit. I was able to run. I had speed. All of a sudden, I don't know where it came from. But I remember standing at the bottom of a road. So at this point, I started to get into sprinting. I was like deep into winning champs and all sorts of stuff. Football as well. I remember just standing on this road. It was like quite late. And I just ran down it. And the sheer joy that I felt then, this is amazing, being able to just run. And I felt like I was the fastest person in the world. I'm sure I wasn't. But I just realized then how much freedom my body gives me, my health gives me. Just recently I've been climbing waterfalls and all sorts of crazy things.
Yeah.
I would never have been able to do that if I didn't climb, wasn't able to move my body, if I didn't look after myself in some way, shape, or form. So for me, it's really appreciating the freedom that health gives you. You can show up in your relationship better. You can show up in your work better. You show up with friends better. And as you said earlier, you become a role model for people. In your case, you even get your daughter giving compliments on your body. That never happens, people. That doesn't happen. But I think
13-year-old girls are not forthcoming compliments generally.
Never. That's like that's the mean girl era, isn't it? That's when they go like really mean. Everything is horrible. So yeah, I think for me, and I've had various injuries. I think I've injured every joint on my right side at some point. This shoulder, torn hamstring surgery, tendon tear.
Wow.
So what happens is when I'm generally after, I recover from those same things a lot faster.
Yeah, for sure. So have you prioritized your health ever since that moment when you were about 10, or have there been wobbles where you've just kind of gone, it's not that important?
Oh, there's definitely been wobbles. I think people think that anyone in the kind of fitness health industry, we just, we're born into the world with a barbell, start doing, and that's it.
Just a machine. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's been a couple of times when my son was on the way, or when he was just born, I remember working like 12-hour days to kind of make sure things happened. And I gained a lot of weight then. There have been numerous times where I have put on weight and not been so healthy. I've been struggling to sleep and stuff. But the one thing I think that's really critical in this health journey, on any journey, is to be able to bounce back and get back on track fast.
Yeah, definitely.
And once we can learn that bit, that actually everyone's going to fall off at some point. Everyone. Let it go, people. It's okay.
Yeah. How quickly you get back up again, that's the absolute key. Yeah. So in your experience, how does your health, all the aspects of your health that we've talked about, how does that connect to living authentically and living with purpose?
Well, number one, it comes with you have your vision and identity of what you want to do, right? Who are you being? What do you want to achieve? How do you want to live? We've spoken about this a lot, for sure. And part of that looking after myself is part of my identity. I can't get rid of it. It's a non-negotiable. Come hell or high water, I will exercise, train, whatever. I will eat fairly healthy and sleep well. And like you said, I can't be authentic to my clients, the women I work with and women I've worked with in the past. I can't be that person if I don't do those things. There's just no connect. And I also can't perform in my business and if we go right back to the beginning of the call, those moments where I need to find a little nugget of information that someone might be giving me. They might be saying all the right things, but their body language leans out of the conversation.
Yeah.
I can only see those things when I'm in top form. If I'm tired, it doesn't happen. You just miss. Yeah, you miss all the small
nuance.
Because you're tired. You're tired. And I think there's a big propensity and anybody listening, is we take on too much. Take on a lot of stuff that doesn't move the needle.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is conditioning almost, isn't it? We've been, so many of us have been brought up with that busy equals you are a worthy person, or you're a valuable person in some way. And the more you do, the better you are in some shape or form. And it's hard to shed those shackles that we've kind of been gifted by our previous generations.
And that comes with practice.
Absolutely.
It comes with practice. And I think it's also just finding the things that actually move the needle. Definitely. Not the busy work. Not the busy work.
So what advice would you give to someone is struggling at the moment to align their life with their values and their health, and what would be the first thing that you would say to them to do?
Well, number one is clarity. I sincerely believe that everyone should be able to quote kind of over their vision, their purpose, life goals, whatever you want to call it, their superhero identity, whatever it is. Like, you should be able to just, this is me, this is where I want to be. And I think people, we get asked when we were kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Remember that conversation?
Yeah. And
but it was always
many times over my lifetime.
You got to tell me now, what was your first one?
Vet.
That's
Really, I had, with my best friend at school at the time, we designed our logo, we designed the practice. I was going to do big animals, she was going to do small animals. We had the whole lot sorted until I realized that science wasn't my strong point.
That's really freaky. I wanted to be a zoologist, David Attenborough. So that's very freaky. Yeah. The stars were aligned at that point.
Indeed.
Where was I? I was going somewhere. Oh, yeah. So it was always a vocation or a job. It was never who is the person you want to become. Like, we weren't taught that. So I think that's number one, is get clear on that. Number two, then start to work backwards. Like, right, what are the things that you really want to include, and how can you start to introduce them, maybe slowly, into your life? If it's, you want to start a class, a Zumba class, whatever it is, once a week, start there. Then get a support system, whether that be a coach, whether that be awesome people. Find a tribe that's walking the same path as you. I think that's probably been one of my biggest things, was finding people who are in a similar field, but with a similar mindset.
Definitely.
To get that support. And then it's not even be a beginner, just be a student. That sounds crazy. But if you go into every bit of exercise, or every time you go to, just think, what is it doing for you? How is it helping? Remind yourselves of that. Sit down and in the week, journal on that stuff. I call it a body journal. It's right, taking stock of that week and what's been going on, and how can you then change it and improve it, or keep it the same. Like, we really sometimes need to stop changing things. We have a habit of looking for the new. And, I remember when I said to someone, they said, how often do you change your training program? I said, probably once every 16 weeks or so. And their eyes popped out of their head. I said, well, I know throughout that time that I've been able to get stronger. Yeah. Like, every lift has just gone up massively. So yeah, sometimes be willing to just stay in it and just see what happens, rather than trying to change it all the time, because we love habit.
Yeah. And I think that really links. I've had other conversations within this podcast as well about doing less and being more. And I think exactly like you're saying, with using the nutrition or the exercise plan as an example, knowing that it's helping you to be the person that you want to be, actually just stick with it then, because unless you're changing who you want to be, actually it's doing what it needs to do. It's not going to change fundamentally things overnight, but it's all moving you one step closer to becoming that vision of who you are. You're stepping into your superhero identity. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. So if you could share one piece of wisdom with your younger self, what would it be?
Oh, Lord. It's a really, really tough question. I think the one thing I'd say to my younger self is, you are capable of more. I can be an overthinker. I can doubt my value and what I bring to the table. And it's a work in progress. I'm still working on that right now. But I'd say if I was talking to younger Greg, it would be value yourself more. You are valued and loved. So yeah, that would probably be the big one thing I'd say to my younger self. And just by
being who you are, not by doing 1,000 more things. Yeah.
Exactly. Amazing. That. Yes.
Amazing. And I just want to circle back to something that you mentioned earlier about your vision for who you are, being around being able to wrestle your son when you're 90 and everything that means. So how confident are you feeling right now for where you are and what that journey is going to look like going forwards? And do you reckon you're going to beat him?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
As if that's even a question.
And that's the trick. If you give yourself room to question it, you're really sowing the seeds of doubt.
Yeah.
So talk about it like you are going to do it. Just talk about it as if it's already happened. I know, I'm sure in the manifesting, that's something that always gets talked about, right? It's talk about it as it's already happened. So I'm like, no, it's happening. I've got some special techniques I've never taught him.
Secrets up your sleeve.
Exactly. I'm just brushing up on some of my old techniques earlier.
Have you warned him that this bout is coming?
Oh, he knows.
Coming in a while, but yeah.
he knows whenever, when we see each other, we wrestle regularly. We always like play fighting anyway. It's like jousting kind of thing. Boys will be boys kind of thing. But again, it all comes down to, if I can wrestle with my son at that age, or even my grandchild, that means I've been independent. I've kept myself strong. I'm able to move like a ninja.
Yeah.
That means I've done all the right things, and I can only control the controllables. If I get ill or sick or whatever, then I've put myself in a position to recover as best as possible. So as far as I'm concerned, it's happening.
It's done. Yeah. My grandfather had 3 hip replacements during his life. And the 3rd hip replacement, he checked into hospital and he was getting into his hospital bed, and he put 2 squash rackets over his bed. And the nurses said to him, "What's that all about? What's going on?" And he said, "After I'm recovered from my operation, I'm going to play my son-in-law at squash and I'm going to beat him." And you see all the nurses rolling their eyes and going, "All right, whatever." Sure enough, he did that. So had his 3rd hip operation, recovered, played his son-in-law at squash, and not just beat him, absolutely wiped the floor with him. So I totally get what you're talking about in terms of this setting a vision and then knowing that it's going to happen and taking the steps every single day to make sure that it does.
And that's the thing. I think sometimes we look for things that are outside of our control to almost kneecap our progress. It's about before, it's like an upper limit, there's many ways you can look at it. But, I'm always trying to ask the question, okay, did the lightning strike? Did the lightning stop you from buying the food you meant to buy this week? Probably not. Yeah. So let's get back to the controllables, because, we do this thing where, and I think we learn it early. Like, do you remember when your teacher said, "Oh, where's your homework?" And you were like, "Right, the dog attacked the cat, and then the cat jumped on the homework and spilled the drink over it."
Wasn't my fault.
Exactly that. When actually you had the whole of the 6 weeks holiday to do this special project. You had it all.
Yeah. It's the lack of responsibility, isn't it? The sloping shoulders. And you're absolutely right. There's so many areas of our life where we will look for other people to hold them to account for what, frankly, we haven't done or haven't done in the way that we can feel proud about, And so, yeah, really, really totally get what you're saying with that. And I think a fantastic way to kind of wrap up this conversation.
Just to remind everybody that nobody complains of gravity, do they?
Yeah. I like that you started with that, and I like that you end with that, because it's such a good, strong reminder about what we can take control of and what we can do, and how much power we have over ultimately becoming unapologetically us. So yeah, love that. Thanks for so much.
Thank you for having me. I just want to say one more thing. For the listeners, Helen has bloomed in the last 5 months or so, and loving your work with, Higher Rocks and just becoming the person you want to be. So
thank you, Greg.
Whoever's listening to this podcast, I know you're writing a book soon, you're doing many amazing things, and people should listen to what you have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming Unapologetically Me. Make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you never miss an episode.